girls you hang out with do not accept to be violated by boys. So not only did I get a chance to run with a torch, but I got to hang around with 13-year-olds. Yo, didn't they wear me out? But my goodness, we were so proud of who these girls have become. And now we are rolling out the program in the whole of Brazil, and we're hoping to take it to different countries, including South Africa.
Wow. You know, just before we move from sports is a very, if we talk sport, it's not just the game. You know, the business of sports, the amount of money in sports, and the fact that this has been a haven for men, not just to play, but also to make a lot of money. And we're very excited in South Africa to see 2 women now in the name of Wendy Luhabe with the rugby, World Rugby, and also Usindi Mabaso being part of FIFA. Where do you think, this is taking us? Do you believe that these are isolated incidents we're seeing, or are you feeling that there is a shift at a higher level of decision making and the inclusion of women?
I guess this is part of the changing narrative about what is a woman's place. A woman's place is in FIFA, is in the World Rugby, in the SG of also of not the SG, Fatima. What is her position, by the way? She's the SG. The SG who now leads FIFA is also a woman, and we are proud as the UN because she came from the UN, and she's there because she's an expert on corporate governance, something that we know FIFA needs a lot. So I think there are pockets of excellence where institutions recognize the talent of women without having to look at their gender. And I think these are some of the isolated but important examples because they role model. Ourselves as UN Women, we also have a partnership with FIFA. In all the hecticness of FIFA, we were there campaigning for representation of women in the new executive. And we are glad to see that they've increased the executive. There's more women. We didn't bargain for Fatima, but when it happened, we were like, what can we say? It was really nice. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's now talk about UN Women. There's been an outcry in terms of reform of institutions within the United Nations. What do you believe the formation of UN Women has done or contributed towards that reform? Just give us a sense of the engenderment of UN generally.
I'm going to say this with all the humility because now I have to blow my trumpet about my organization. With all the humility I can muster. Well, we were only formed in 2010, so we're one of the young and new institutions of the United Nations. We are actually, I think, the poster child of the UN reforms. We still have to reform the Security Council, as you know. But we would not have existed as the UN Women if it was not for civil society. That is why today is so important, because today it is about affirming, recognizing, and institutionalizing the role of civil society in the life and work of UN Women. So civil society, women's movement, feminist organizations sat on the UN and worked with the member states. Quite a number of them are also progressive member states, and ensured that we were born. Our mandate as UN Women is addressing the policy deficiencies as they impact on women. So we try to be a standard setter for the type of legislation that should be in countries, and make sure that the legislation works and enhances the women and girls. Just to give you an example, for instance, right now, we, as a result of the SDGs, we are undertaking probably the biggest reform of legislation that we would probably ever do in our generation, of looking at all countries in the world that have legislation that discriminates against women. And there's more than 100 countries in that category. So it's a lot of work, and every lawyer is in the room. We like pro bono because we have to make sure that we repeal in some cases, that we amend in some cases, that we enact new legislation in some countries, but also ensuring that the existing laws in countries is being implemented, because we do have a lot of good laws in many countries, and implementation is a problem. And I think this is where you all come in as civil society, because your role is to monitor, support, and be advocates of proper implementation of agreements that governments have already undertaken. South Africa, for instance, just one of the laws that we are passionate about as UN Women is the Convention of Domestic Workers. We are one of the 22 countries in the world that has ratified that convention. We have gone some way to implement it. As you know, in South Africa, we've got minimum wage for domestic workers, but there's other regulations that are needed in order to make that, ensure that we've got the desired impact on domestic workers. Your role as partners and as civil society and as trade unionists is to make sure that we accompany the Department of Labor to take this to its logical conclusion, so that the domestic workers are not alone in pursuing this fight. Or, for instance, equal wage. Many countries do not have laws that enforces equal wage. But this is important to do because it is a transgression that exists in so many countries. So we've come to the conclusion as a standard setter that countries need to have legislation that recognizes this and does something about it. South Africa, again, we're one of the 44 countries in the world that has legislation, but implementation is patchy. Our responsibility in this room is to accompany the departments responsible and make sure that implementation is as best as it can be. So that is one of our, and we do this in many, I'm just giving these examples that South Africans can relate to. Our responsibility is also coordination. We coordinate all issues that have to do with women across the UN system, because as you know, also in the UN we have areas of specialization. UNICEF leads the UN on all issues that have to do with children. They are the ones that take the steps in front, but to the extent that the work on children also has to do with the girl child and to do with the mothers, we then collaborate and when we monitor the extent to which that work also helps us to achieve what we need to achieve in our mandate. WHO, for an example, it's our premium institution on matters of health. One of our fantastic collaboration that we have with them is on issues of violence against women. They are the ones that have helped us to understand the depth of violence against women. Because when women are abused, the one place they go to talk the truth about what is happening in their life is their health provider, their doctor, and so on. And because of the confidentiality, they tend to be truthful about what is happening in their life. WHO, therefore, has been able to systematically document the impact of violence against women in society, the depression, the injuries, the permanent damage that is done on women, the loss of days for work, the carrying on of the anger that the mother experiences to the children, who themselves become psychologically affected, the psychiatric problems that now exist in many families, etc. So when we talk about the statistics that we use in relation to violence against women, we tend just to focus on the statistics that is generated by WHO because it is the most reliable. But also that must tell you that this is not all of the story, because WHO cannot capture everything that is there. There's lots of women who even don't go to doctors as a result. But at least we are able to talk about the figures that are reliable because we know that WHO does a thorough job. And of course they do a lot of things, maternal health and so on. So again, we have a relationship with them where we cannot really do an oversight. They are much more sophisticated than us, but we have a relationship that ensures that issues that have to do with women are on top of their agenda. And fortunately, they are one of our institutions that is really focused on making sure that health policies in countries work for women. We are also responsible for working with the ILO, the International Labour Organization, which looks at issues that have to do with workers, with industries, as well as with policies that have to do with the labour market. Again, a big partner. And we do get overstretched because there's just so many of this. And education. UNESCO is one of the critical institutions for us, especially because of issues of gender equality have got to be addressed from grade zero. Because when we get into the space where we are most active as UN women, it is a bit late. We need to make sure that the curriculum, preschool, at that age you are addressing the issues. So our work with UNESCO is collaborating with them to lead in making sure that as early as possible and through education they are addressing the issue. And we're trying to build up momentum with them in order to make sure that campaigns like He4See, they start start them at that age when they don't even know how to pronounce the name of the campaign.
Wow, that's wonderful. I mean, just talking about...
Sorry, lastly. So policy is our area, coordination and implementation of programs. So implementation of programs, however, we have to implement programs that we can scale and the programs that can change the paradigm. We have to retreat as UN women from programs that are once in a while, once off, with no possibility to scale and no capacity to change the trajectory in a sustainable way and create change that lasts. Because otherwise, we would be part of every little program that happens in the country. And sometimes it's actually difficult to stay in that area of programs that are really moving the needle. But we are working very hard because we also cannot just drop some of the programs that we were doing for many years, and women were accustomed to working us in that way. But we're trying to position ourselves to work in that area where we work with energy, with Snowy. This should not be the once-off. We should be able to understand how it works so that we can do it in DRC, we can do it in Liberia, we can do it in Nepal, we can do it in India, we can do it in Colombia, we can do it in Nicaragua. So that is the idea.
You know, one of the areas that seem to be really difficult to crack is the area of gender-based violence. And in terms of the UN women, particularly in South Africa, what do you think, your interventions can assist what we are trying to do as civil society as well as government in South Africa?
It really is one of the most difficult areas for us. In the world, generally, the progress that we've made as far as that issue is concerned is not as good as we would like it to be. And the fact that when I meet a head of state, a minister, leaders who are concerned about issues to do with women, we never finish a conversation without addressing and touching on the issue of violence against women, because it is in every country. Iceland is the country in the world that has done most for gender equality. They tick all the good boxes about the things that they do that are good for women. Right at the bottom would be a country like Yemen, which you struggle to tick a box on what is good, which is done for women. But what does Ireland and Yemen have in common? Bayabetwa abafazi in both countries. Women are beaten up from the country that is on top in terms of being most progressive to the country that is at the bottom. And that is why part of the changing narrative for us as UN women is working with men. And I think we passed the blaming game that men are bad and so on. We actually want to mobilize the men to get into the space so that they can make a difference. We believe that there is a critical mass of good men who are in the closets, who are not doing enough to change the paradigm. And what we're trying to do with the work that we do with men, with people like Bo Abo Bafana, is really to create a platform for those men to become active, to actually live their lives and be exemplary about what it means to have positive masculinity. Positive masculinity is not to be a guy and a dude who dominates. It is about being kind. It is about picking up your kid at school, and it is about protecting your sister It is about standing up for your mother if you've got an abusive father. It is about making sure that you make the right decisions in support of your daughters. Now, the range of issues that we deal with in violence against women includes, for instance, domestic violence, which is the most common form of violence in every country, because every woman stays in a home, and this is the one that we don't always get to know about because it's difficult for women to talk about. To the public violence in areas of war where you've got massive rape, like in Iraq, what is happening to the Yazidi women, to the honor killings that happen in countries like Pakistan, to the violence that you see in South Africa, the shooting of partners, and also the silence of the South Africans when these things happen. You know, I actually have to ask myself, what country am I living in when women get killed and there isn't moral outrage? In India, they rape one woman, the whole country comes into a standstill. Atung. Really, we need to do things differently. But it should not be women by themselves. Men must be there. Communities must be there. Law enforcers must be there. Parents must be there. Everybody, private sector, everybody has to make a difference. I am urging us, because this level of tolerance for violence against women is numbing us. We need to make sure that we reawaken. And the pockets of excellence, I mean, I was in KwaZulu-Natal yesterday listening to what the MEC is trying to do there, and I was just saying, poor woman, she is working so hard. The problem is so big. She actually needs the whole society to be helping her to do the things that she's trying to do so that they're in scale. So masses, scale, activism matters in this issue. Then the training of the law enforcers is also a big issue. We have designed a program as the UN Women, together with the UN Office Against Drugs and Crime, which can be offered to police academies, magistrates, and so on, which we would love to see implemented in many countries, including South Africa. That is one intervention we are trying to do. We are now collaborating and supporting the initiative of the NYDP in New York, where they are also training their police. We hope that if the NYDP gets it right, because they are always in the movies, everybody will watch what they do and they will try to imitate what the NYDP does. But we've got good laws in South Africa. We are not at war. We have women like yourselves. I think together we can really raise the bar. And I think we care about these issues. So we need to also just be a bit more vocal about these issues and our solidarity with women. What happened to the women at Rhodes broke my heart. The fact that they had to stand there by themselves. You know, so we should not allow that to happen. I know we're out of time.
We're not out of time. We are just going to allow 5 questions from the floor. So get yourself ready. As they are raising those hands, quickly talk about the young women. I know that UN Women has just launched an initiative for the first time, I believe, where young women have been brought in as part of that. How do you see that moving forward?
So as part of changing the narrative as UN Women, not only have we moved into the space of men and boys, which was not very easy because not every feminist believes we should be doing this work. But I just told Nzo Chalanges Fuba, we need to win the men and we need them to have the space to do this work. We've moved into working directly with leaders, not only with our ministers who also need support in many countries, because women's ministries, they've got small budgets, they don't have adequate staff. So we then also engage with heads of states in relation to issues of gender and women and girls, because we need heads of states to also lead from the front on these issues. So the issues of focusing on leadership is important. We have also, in changing the narrative, are engaging with CEOs of companies, because they also need to use the power of one to change the way their companies work. They must believe and they must lead from front. And then youth is an important component of changing our narrative. We now have a youth CSW which met for the first time last year. And I hope this year all the member states will agree for us to institutionalize it. And we bring together young women, about 70% women and 30% men, because we have to continuously get the men to be advocates. And they also have their version of CSW, and they report to the bigger CSW about the way the young people are seeing the issues. And of course, we are also now insisting that when governments have their formal delegations to CSW, they must include younger people in the delegation, because this is also where you train your future diplomats. They also add the spice in the delegation because they've got their own way of looking at things. We then also have a policy division within UN Women that looks at matters to do with young women, youth in general, because we're trying to work with both men and women in our youth work. Yeah.
Thank you so much to Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. I see quite a number of questions. So we're going to take two that side, 111, because I'm seeing lots of hands this side. Okay, if somebody can just give the mic to somebody. Thank you. Introduce yourself and the issue. Can we give her a mic that works, please?
Women in the stories that we cover as the media. A lot of the time, speaking from the African continent, women are poor. They are always running away from the war. They've got children that they're carrying at the back, and they're not seen as people who have the power to change any situation. But institutions, you take decisions where you as people that have opinions, that are experts, that can actually provide solutions, but you find reluctance from the women, the few women that are able to be or have managed to make it in some of those positions. And I'm not sure, and I'm hoping, speaking to an audience like this, that there is a lot of investment in women being media friendly, able to be phoned for an opinion. And I'm hoping that that is perhaps part of that process as we try and change the narrative, because we actually can't do it without the media. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Batlatsi. We really appreciate that. Let's get another question. Thank you. Introduce yourself. Can we get another mic, please?
Hi. Hello. Hi. That's my voice, not hers.
Okay, you introduce yourself.
But is your mic quick? Okay, can I go first? Cool. Hi, my name is Bandile. I'm from an organization called Rethink Africa, which is a youth-led organization. My question is on something that my colleague Mpumi touched on respectability. So I'd like your view on how we change the narrative so that it's a narrative for a modern sort of 21st century generation. I think a lot of the narratives that hold women back are things that matter deeply to us. So like religion, like culture, especially in the African context, we want to, push our culture. And those, a lot of the time, those are some of the things that are really entrenched in our society that, prevent different ways of emancipating people. So from your international experience, those hard things that really matter to people, like their religions, like their cultures, how do you get people out of that sort of thinking to allow for a truly different... Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can we get another one this side? Yes, you go.
Good evening, my name is Eugenia from Business Unit South Africa. Probably the question will be to Sis Phumzile, and maybe a word for the advisory council that is coming in. When I walk through the UN and see the previous SGs, I said to myself, this cannot be. How soon are we beginning to change that narrative, to change and have a woman leader on top? So I'm saying it to you, unfortunately, I might not do much. And thank you for the opportunity to be part of the selection committee. Those that we've selected, Obafana and my comrade behind me, how can they lobby other countries to be able to have a woman leader in the UN? Thank you very much.
So much. Can we have one this side?
Thank you. Hello. Okay. I just wanted to find out. Recently, the DP.
Please introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Vincent. My surname is Madisha. Thank you for giving me the platform. I just want to know or find out. Recently, the DP, Deputy President, has launched a campaign on young girls and women. So I just want to find out from the UN Women, what is the involvement or the strategy looking at the pillars which the DP has launched on, which is empowering women, young women, keeping young girls at school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who are we giving now? We have to make sure, Pella.
Gender sensitive, gender balance in the people asking questions. But there's no one.
Yeah.
Okay, it's me this side.
Okay.
Can I go ahead?
Introduce.
Good evening, ma'am. My name is Mlambo-Ngcuka. I'm here. I'm here. So, first, congratulations, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I share the same concerns as you do about the statistics that we have in our country of violence against women, and my view is that we don't see enough punitive measures in order to deter the perpetrators from doing what they do. And I'd like to know what measures have been put in place or that you may have suggested, and how soon our country can start to adopt them, because otherwise we can't stop this. And to Dr. Vuyo, you mentioned earlier in your speak with the panel discussion that while you were doing some work with the Korean group, they mentioned that the way we consume is based on our pride. And I would just like to put my view across that says that if as a people we don't even have pride in our own language, in our own identity, I don't know how we plan to get around the problems that we have of pride in ourselves as an African people. Thank you. I'd like
Thank
to
you.
hear.
I think Tina Iboga will be the last one. Thank you.
I'm this side. Okay, my name is Nandima Diba. My question is going to come at the end, but I would like to first emphasize the issue about the topic we had that relates to blessers. In consideration of the fact that we know culture is never homogeneous, and also in consideration of the fact that we as women had not stood up to support the mayoress of Utukela when she was going back to the old culture of virginity testing. When we look into what drives these young kids to end up in that environment of blessers, as women, what are we trying to do to help them? Because some of them are forced by the conditions they're coming from, and they end up with this problem. And I'm thinking that us just making noise about how we don't advocate for these blessers, we need to try find out what is it that we can do, because this is an outcome of some poverty from home or lack of access to certain things. Not everybody though, that's why I'm saying the culture is not homogeneous. How can we then come up with a program whereby we help the youth to become entrepreneurs and be job creators
and not job seekers, because not everybody is going to get a job after university.
Thank you so much. I think.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello. My name is James Wanjohi.
Where are you now? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, stunning. My name is James Wanjohi. I'd just like to raise the question about, the interventions for the future. Most of the questions that have been asked are about the realities of today. The future of the youth, the future of Africa is the youth which is ahead of us, and many questions around leapfrogging and technology are not being addressed. So the question about curriculum, the question about how we're preparing our youth for today, for the future. What interventions does the UN have in the education space, government space, and programmatic that enable that our young girls today, I'm a father of a 15-year-old, to be the leaders of the future, both in technology and other skills and fields of work that we live in today. Thank you.
Thank you. Really, we're having to move now. I'm taking my last one.
Yes, good evening. I'm Nonhlanhla Skhosana. I'm just here from the Sonke Gender Justice. My question is based on the focus on the He for She program. We're currently working with the South African National Taxi Association, which employs about 50,000 men in South Africa. I would like to know from Mama Phumzile is there any plan of prioritizing such industry in terms of targeting them to be part of the He and She program? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm very sorry for those who haven't had a chance. One of the reasons I thought we would end with Miss Tina Iboka is because we also have to congratulate her, because recently she has joined a world body of nuclear medical, I won't have the right wording, but we are so proud of you, and thank you so much for representing us.
That was a live broadcast from the Emperor's Palace in the east of Johannesburg. We saw the UN Women Executive Director Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka addressing the women that are at those awards.
Standard Bank Awards, I think.
Yes, it's the Standard Bank Top Women Achievers Awards. Some interesting discussions there, talking about supporting women in business, innovation, but also just some of the socio-economic challenges that women face.